Part 34. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 331. Chapter 331 Gray Elixir. After a stick of incense, Fia, whose injuries all over her body were much better, and her breath was stabilized before she returned to the space. Then he clambered out of the pit and found another one. This one was lying on a tree, passed out. This guy probably wanted to hug the big tree, but he fell down and was even more seriously injured by the big tree. Yuan shook her head, quickly stuffed a handful of healing elixirs into it, put it into the space and handed it to Yuhairan and the others. The third one was even worse. It was pinned down by a big tree and sand and rocks. It was really dying. When she dug it out, it was really terrible. There was no good part about it. She almost wanted to give it up and let her brother contract a new one. Anyway, there were still monsters in the space. Just when she was about to wave her hand and take it away to the black soil, the flying winged tiger miraculously opened its eyes and looked at her with a pleading look. Damn it, you know it. Yuan was a little embarrassed. She scratched her head. Forget it, she was defeated by its little eyes. She grabbed a handful of healing elixir and stuffed it into its mouth, and slowly helped it refine it. Perhaps its desire to survive was too strong, and when it began to recover from its injuries, it was able to refine and absorb the medicinal power on its own. Why? Yuan sighed and stuffed a few more healing elixirs into it. There was no way, they were 5th level monsters, and hers were 3rd level elixirs. After a long time, it opened its eyes and looked at Yuan gratefully. Okay, you're okay, Yuan patted its big head. By the way, you don't have a name, let's call you Jiangsheng. She has such a strong desire to live, and she doesn't know which brother's spiritual pet she is. The 3 winged tigers all look the same, and she can't tell them apart. Johnson whined at her twice, expressing his gratitude and liking. Yuan touched it again before putting it into the space. It was only now that she had time to look at this place. It was not damp down here, but it was full of energy and dense vegetation. She could see at a glance that the width had an end, but the length had no end. The mountains on 3 sides are empty. Who did this? Yuan was so frightened. She, a golden elixir monk, didn't have the ability to do such a big project anyway. It can be called a miraculous skill. These are elixirs and spiritual fruit trees. When she looked carefully at the vegetation on the ground, she found that most of them were elixirs. Just because there has been no sunlight for a long time, the elixir turned gray. Yuan was shocked. What on earth is going on? Who hollowed out the mountain and planted elixirs in this dark place? It's so unscientific. After the shock, she checked to see if there were any monsters. There were no monsters on the ground, but she did see a wooden house. Wood house. Yuan used her footwork to run over. She stood in front of the wooden house. No one had lived in it for a long time and it was in dilapidated condition. She pushed the wooden door gently, and the wooden house collapsed and turned into ashes. I'm sorry, the dust covered her body. She quickly used several dust-removing spells. After the dust dispersed, only a few stone stools and a spiritual were revealed on the ground. Then there is no more. She picked up the spiritual and looked at it. It was still usable. Yuan looked carefully at this incredible place and saw that the elixir had been chewed. There were no monsters on the ground, so it was the monsters underground that did it. She pulled up an elixir on the spot, but it was a 5th level elixir, Aglossus. The whole plant was gray, but she still recognized it. She took a closer look at the other elixirs, which were basically rare elixirs. With so many elixirs placed in front of him, it was fake that Yuan wasn't excited. She looked around the ground and found that it really looked like someone's medicine garden. It's so weird. But no matter what, she must dig up these elixirs. So he waved his hand and moved the 3 Yuhairan brothers out. When the 3 brothers saw the scene clearly, they were also surprised. Xiao Sier, is this the bottom of the mountain? Yu Heiran asked. Yes, and there are also elixirs everywhere. The three brothers took a breath. They had never thought that there would be such a scene under the mountain. It was actually a medicine garden. What an illusion. Xiao Sier, are you going to dig up these elixirs? Yu Heiran picked up a grey elixir and asked, is this still a elixir? Yuan nodded. She believed that it would become a normal elixir if moved into space. The spiritual energy down here is rich, the elixirs grow very well, and most of them are precious elixirs. For an alchemist, there are no elixirs that are attractive. Good. So the four brothers and sisters began to dig for the elixir. Occasionally, Yuan would enter the space to see Mujukan and the three flying tigers. Yuan was also drunk. In order to prevent her from using up her consciousness too much, she wanted to see if her physical strength would kill someone if she fell. This is okay, people are okay, and the injuries are not mild. Seeing that he dares to do such stupid things in the future, Yuan slapped him the face. As long as you can. Hey, daughter-in-law, don't slap someone in the face. Mujukan arched his arms into her arms. Yuan said angrily, I specialize in slaps in the face. Just take good care of your injuries. I'm going out. Without waiting for Mujukan to say anything, she came out of space with a flash of consciousness and continued digging for the elixir. Yuan has Huang Chuiying's memory. These elixirs are very rare in the spiritual world. If they are dug back into space, they may grow into 6th, 7th, 8th, or even 9th order. The 9th level elixir does not become a 9th level elixir as soon as it grows, but its age and maturity period. Those that can grow for more than 10,000 years are considered 9th level elixirs. The maturity period of ordinary elixirs is either 1 year or 10 years and 100 years. After maturity, it will no longer grow. This is the difference between low-level elixirs and high-level elixirs. The elixirs here are usually at level 5, because this is a small world, and whatever can grow to level 5 is its peak. Obviously these elixirs have not reached maturity, and they will definitely grow longer if they are planted in the space. Be careful. While Yuan was thinking, a huge monster pangolin suddenly appeared in front of her. The pangolin opened its mouth and bit Yuan. At this critical moment, she made a mistake in her steps, and the soul thorns of Yu Heiran and the others also attacked the pangolin. The pangolin felt the danger was coming, so it took a few steps back to escape. Yuan has come to her senses. No matter how many groups of soul thorns hit the pangolin dodged the attacks of the three brothers Yu Heiran but not Yuan's soul thorns. She is a veteran. Even 5th level monsters cannot escape her hands, let alone this 4th level pangolin. The pangolin rolled over in the ground twice and then died. Yuan glanced at the elixir crushed by it in pain, and quickly put its body into the storage bag. Level 4 demon beast skin is worth a lot of spirit stones. The three brothers saw that the pangolin was dead. They came over. Yu Heiran asked, Xiao Sier, what were you thinking about just now? Not even aware that danger is approaching. Yuan shook her head and said, I didn't think about anything. I just thought that these elixirs are so high-end, they don't look like the elixirs on this continent. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 332. Chapter 332, Return to the Valley. The three brothers looked at each other. They had little knowledge about elixirs and it was not easy to blame her. They just asked her to be careful and pay attention to her safety. So the three brothers continued to dig for the elixir. Yuan watched the three brothers working hard to dig out the elixir. She cursed herself for being distracted. It was not safe here. She should always be aware of the incoming monsters. This time she was careless, and it was also due to her habit. She always likes to think clearly when encountering doubtful things. With this episode, The four brothers and sisters later release their spiritual consciousness, so that when another monster attacks them, they will not be caught off guard. At this time, Yuan frowned and looked at the gray spiritual fruit tree in front of her. She didn't know why it didn't bear fruit. Logically speaking, it should be the result, but she didn't think too much about it. Thinking of the pangolin incident when she was distracted before, she had better move all these into the space and study it later. Brother, dig up those trees too, Yuan said to Yuhairan. Tree, Yuhairan straightened up and looked at the tree in front of him. Well, these are not ordinary trees, they are spiritual fruit trees, Yuan nodded. When Yuhairan looked at the tree, he thought it was an ordinary tree on the mountain. It seems that I have to learn more when I have time in the future. Even if I don't use it, I won't not recognize the gold inlaid jade when I see the treasure. Yu Hao and Yu Haoshan didn't have anything to do with it. Anyway, they dug when their sister asked them to. At this time, Yuan's space was already full and there was no room to put it, so she had to give her three brothers some storage bags and pack them first. This medicinal garden is too long. Her space is only 200 acres, while this medicinal garden is more than 600 acres. Xiao Seer, when will the four of us finish digging? Yuhairan said with a frown. The four of them have been digging for 4 days, and they haven't even found 1%. It's hard to tell when and what month we will dig. Finished. It would be a pity to look at these elixirs if he didn't dig them out, but he would be worried about Xiao, Xiaoqi, and the others outside. I don't know how they are doing now. As the eldest brother, his heart is broken. Yuan stepped forward and patted the frowning Yuhairan. Brother is worried about Xiao and the others. Then what did you tell them? It's not like there's nothing to explain, right? Yuhairan, I'll let them go back to the valley by themselves first. But he was still worried about Xiao Wu and Xiao Qi, especially Xiao Qi, who was very temperamental. He looks like he is not afraid of anything. That's it, don't worry. With my uncle following them, they won't come in impulsively. I'll ask Mujukan to come out with all the spiritual pets to help. If we don't clean up this time, will there be another chance next time? Yuan still reassured them. After all, Feng Yuan had been an emperor and would not act impulsively. To be honest, seeing so many elixirs, she would regret it if she didn't want them. Even if you can't use it all, you can sell it for spiritual stones. When the time comes to throw the spiritual stone into the space, how rich the spiritual energy in the space will be. In short, all of them benefited. Moreover, the injuries of Mujukan and the others were healed. The 3 winged tigers and a wolf king could dig out their big claws after a few digs. Yuhairan thought about it, and his anxious heart slowly calmed down. It might be that the second and third children were in danger this time, which made him panic. Always regard them as stupid young people aged 17 or 18. Yu Hao also patted him on the shoulder and said, "Yeah, don't worry, brother, Xiao Wu, Xiao Qi and the others should be fine. They won't come into this Juya forest." "Yes, brother, it's useless to worry, you can't go out alone," Yu Haoshan also said, winking at Yu Hao. It was the 2 brothers who insisted on coming to Juya forest, but Xiaoliu and Xiaoqi knew better than to follow. The result is that we really overestimate our capabilities. The eldest brother was also afraid that they would be in danger, so he followed them in. As a result, the monsters did not kill any of them but were chased to the cliff by the monsters and fell off. Yu Haoshan was heartbroken when he thought about it. In the future, if he doesn't have that strength, he'd better not show off. Yuan's consciousness had already entered the space. Seeing that their injuries were healed, she moved Mujukan, the 3 flying winged tigers, and the silver moon wolf out with her consciousness. Mujukan didn't say anything when he found out, and began to instruct Silver Moon Wolf to dig up the elixir with him. Yuhairan and the 3 of them also brought their own spiritual pets and started digging for elixirs. Yuan also wants the little snake to come out, but it's a pity that this guy is still in seclusion. Other monsters are locked in the space without being contracted, and they still have no way to escape when they are released. So the 5 men and 4 beasts dug for 5 more days, and they dug out more than half of the elixir in the entire underground space. Mainly due to the 4 spirit beasts, their big claws grabbed deeply and brought up a large amount of elixir. Then Yuan put the elixir together with the soil and piled it into the space, and then slowly sorted it out. At this moment, Yuan couldn't care whether the elixir would be damaged. The few people saw that there was not much left, so they simply dug out the rest in one go. In any case, there is no difference between a few more days and a few less days. After finishing collecting the spirits, Yuan took them all into the space and escaped down the mountain alone. She tried going up the mountain but couldn't escape no matter what, which meant there was a restriction there. When Yuan emerged from the ground, he asked Mujukan to come out, and the two of them rushed towards the west of Juya Forest. To the east is the world of immortality, and to the west is the secular world. They encountered a lot of monsters along the way. They hunted all the monsters that could be hunted. If they couldn't be hunted, they let the 4 spiritual pets come out to help, and they gained a lot. It took half a month for the two of them to hurry back to the valley. In the valley, Xiao, Xiaoqi, and Fen Yuan and his son were both there. Yuan immediately moved Yu Heiran and the others out, and was relieved when she saw them in the valley. Big brother, second brother, and third brother, how do you feel about entering the 9 Nether Forest? Are there really monsters everywhere in it? When Xiao Wu and Xiao Qi saw them coming back, they pulled the 3 brothers and asked questions. They wanted to go in, but their uncle forced them to come back and not let them cause trouble. Haha, let's ask your second and third brothers, Yu Heiran said, leaving them behind and closed up. He wants to form an elixir. Yu Hao and his brothers touched their noses and ran away after saying hey a few times. They were embarrassed to say it. Xiao and Xiaoqi caught Mujukan again. Mujukan didn't give any face to his 2 uncles, so he told the truth. The 2 boys were so excited that they wanted to go. Yuan rolled her eyes when she heard this. There were still more than 4 years left before the 10-year period, so everyone decided to go into seclusion. Taking the opportunity, Yuan gave them all the golden elixirs and asked Xiao Wu, Xiao Qi, Feng Yu, and Feng, and Yunjing to go into the space and pick one. A 5th level monster comes to make a contract. Xiao Wu and Xiao Qi also chose the flying wing tiger, and Feng Yuan and his son chose 2 pairs of golden eagles. They say domineering. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 333. Chapter 333 Return to the 9 Nether Forest. Mujukan was very worried about Mr. Mu and the others. After talking to Yuan, he went out to look for them. At this time, Yuan was sorting out the elixirs in the space. There were too many, so she had to collect all the mature elixirs and plant some of the gray elixirs. After the gray elixir entered the space, it began to slowly turn into the color of the elixir itself. Sure enough, as she thought, her omnipotent space is awesome. After planting, the space was too crowded, so Yuan had no choice but to put the mountain of elixirs, along with the medicines and soil, into a storage bag for storage. After finishing the arrangement, Yuan also practiced in the space, took care of the elixirs, and picked the ripe spiritual fruits to brew spiritual wine. She couldn't brew monkey wine, but she still knew what elixir there was in monkey wine. After brewing it, she added a bottle of divine soul liquid to the wine to see what kind of wine it would become. The days were spent practicing and taking care of the elixirs. In the blink of an eye, the 10-year period has arrived, and there are more and more people in the valley. Mujukan came back with Mr. Mu and the others. Speaking of what happened to Mr. Mu, It's really ridiculous. He actually went to serve as a general for a country and led an army to fight with other countries. When Mujukin found him, he was wielding his sword like the wind on the battlefield. He is a foundation building monk who comes on the field, and the opponent's people are not cut into pieces by him like melons. Mujukin's lips twitched. His grandfather was a monk, and he had not been a general for a lifetime. At first he went out with Fen Yuan. Fen Yuan was an emperor, so how could he become a general with him? So the two parted ways, and Fen Yuan found Yu Heiran to be with them. U11 and the other 12 went out, but only half of them came back. Half of them met the person they liked and decided not to come back. Yuan said nothing. There is no such thing as a banquet that lasts forever, and people have their own ambitions. She is happy for them that they have found their destination. At the same time, some of the responsibilities on her shoulders have been reduced, so why not do it? The last ones to come back were Mr. Mu and Mr. Mu. MRSU and MRS Mu knew that Gao passed away not long after they left. They were sad for a while, and even went to Gao's tombstone to sit with her for a while. In the past 10 years, everyone has practiced very hard, and both their cultivation and physical strength have improved to varying degrees. In addition to the 5 brothers Yu Heiran who formed elixirs one after another 2 years ago, there are 6 people like U11, Shitu, Wu Sheng, and Mr. Mu who can all form elixirs, but the others are not that early. Especially, Xiaoliu has the lowest cultivation level. Even Mu Yi's son and daughter have higher cultivation level than her. They are still in the middle stage of foundation building, and they are almost to death by Yu Heiran brothers. But there is nothing we can do about her, because she is the youngest sister. Those who wanted to form elixirs each gave Yuan something in exchange for the elixirs. After that, the Yu Heiran brothers and Mujukin took them to the back mountain to survive the elixir tribulation. The journey through the golden elixir tribulation was very fast. They all practiced profound energy to improve their bodies, and in the end everyone successfully formed the golden elixir. After forming the golden elixir, they returned home in triumph together. Even celebrated them after coming back. On this day, everyone was sitting in the valley. This is when Yuan called everyone to come. The matter here is over, and it is time to enter the world of immortality. Yuan glanced at the people sitting there, and she said seriously, "We are going to go to the world of immortality. If you are willing to go, you can follow us. If you are not willing to go, you can stay here. We are ready to leave tomorrow." U11 stood up, saluted her and said, "Master, the 6 of us have decided not to go." Oh, Yuan was a little surprised. She had thought that Uncle Mu and the others might not go, but she had never thought that U11 and the other 6 would not go. Yuan sighed and said again, "There is no such thing as a feast that lasts forever," so she nodded in agreement. U11 saw regret in her eyes, but they liked this kind of life very much, without disputes or dangers. This was the life they wanted to live. They can only live up to their master's expectations. Mr. Mu and his wife, as well as Mr. Mu and his family, said they would not go either. They think the same as U11 and others, they all like this kind of peaceful life and don't like the days of fighting and killing. They don't want to live in fear all day long. The last ones to go are Mr. Mu, Fen Yuan, and his son, the 7 brothers and sisters Yuan, Mujukin, Shitu, and Wu Sheng. A few people decided to prepare to leave tomorrow, and then everyone went to prepare separately. In the space, Mujukin felt a little sad. Yuan leaned on him and said, "If parents don't go, we can come back at any time." Mujukin shook his head, "I still hope they will follow us. My father may be worried about my mother. It will be much safer to live here, but I am still very conflicted." Mujukin understood that after they separated this time, they probably really separated. With the speed of their cultivation, it would not be difficult to form a baby and transform into a god. But my father has been reluctant to form an elixir. It's not because he can't form an elixir, but because he doesn't want to form an elixir. If my mother can't practice, my father will definitely accompany her until she grows old. He has no choice but to allow a person without spiritual roots to cultivate and become a monk. Cultivating Xianqi only adds a few decades to your lifespan. The final result cannot be changed. It was then that Yuan felt that Yu Heiran and the others had made the right choice not to get married. If they got married here, they might not follow her, so she really had no choice. Love is something that can sometimes make a person perfect, but it can never make a person perfect. The next day, Yuan came out of the space and collected everyone who wanted to go. After bidding farewell to Uncle Mu and the others, she flew to the outside of Juya Forest alone. This time, the 5 Yu Heiran brothers have to cross the Juya Forest by themselves. Yuan certainly agrees. They set off with their respective spiritual pets. Mr. Mu, Fen Yuan, and his son, and Wu Sheng also entered the Juya Forest with their spiritual pets. Only Shitu and Xiaoliu followed them. Xiaolu did not make a contract with the giant beast that looked like a dog and a wolf. She made a contract with a 5-tailed blue fox, and the stone made a contract with a 5-tailed white fox. The last monster, Yuan, made all the contracts by herself. This time they decided to go directly through the Juya Forest instead of taking the passage below. They agreed to meet at the end of the Juya Forest. Experience here and fight with monsters, which can greatly improve your combat effectiveness. Once in the world of cultivating immortals, everyone knows that monks will fight if they disagree. No one will reason with you, so strength means everything. So this experience is imperative. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 334. Chapter 334 Fierce. Fourth sister, we too are leaving first, Xiaoliu pulled the stone and said to her before leaving. Yuan shook her head speechlessly, and she also said to Mujukan, let's go too. Mujukan nodded and walked into the Juya Forest with her. In the Juya Forest, there were several battles going on at this time. The 5 Yu Heiran brothers who entered first were fighting with a group of demon wolves. There are many demon wolves, which is suitable for the 5 brothers to practice their skills. At this time, the 5 people formed a circle back to back and killed the demon wolves that surrounded them. The magical flying swords in the hands of the 5 people were drawn out in unison. The demon wolves in front of them all lost their heads, and then a lot of talismans exploded among the wolves. Although it is a second-level talisman, if it cannot be blown to death, it is still enough for the demon wolves to drink a pot. Outside the demon wolf circle, the 5th-level demon wolf king was entangled by Johnson, and the wolf versus tiger scene was as intense as it was. Their fighting methods are simple: tearing, scratching, biting, and sometimes competing to see whose voice is louder. You roar and I roar again. An hour later, Johnson was about to collapse. With a tug, the skin on his belly was scratched by the caught wolf king. Blood spurted out instantly and his intestines flowed out. Johnson roared in pain, and the demon wolf took the opportunity to open its mouth and bite Johnson's neck. At this moment, 4 flying tigers jumped up from the dense forest and bit the wolf king. The wolf king reacted very quickly, changed his target, jumped over Johnson and ran away. Even if you don't care about your own wolf sons and grandsons, escaping for your life is the most important thing. Grandma, what kind of human monk is so cunning that he only lets a flying tiger fight with him? One of the 4 winged tigers was left looking at Johnson, who fell to the ground, and 3 of them caught up with the wolf king. After a few rounds, the wolf king came over and threw him in front of Johnson, but he had no breath, meaning to let him have a look. They took revenge on it. Then he glanced at Johnson, turned around and pounced on the wolves. The 5 brothers were wielding flying swords among the wolves. They were in a state of utter disarray. Their clothes were scratched by the monster wolves, and their bodies were scarred and their bones were visible. However, they fought vigorously. The 5 of them have the same tacit understanding as they did when they were young. Among them, Yu Hao and Xiao Qi have the strongest combat effectiveness. The 2 of them inadvertently took action when other brothers were in danger. The number of living demon wolves is slowly decreasing, and the corpses lying on the ground are disappearing one by one. Each of them wore several storage bags, and any corpses of demon wolves that blocked their fight were put into the storage bags. Just at this time, the demon wolf king died, and 3 flying tigers came to help. Only then did the 5 brothers know that Johnson was injured. This is what they had arranged before. Johnson would restrain the demon wolf king, and the 4 flying tigers would be ambushed in the dense forest. If Johnson was defeated, they could rescue him at any time. After all, the 5 flying tigers used to be in a friendly circle of monster beasts, and there was no dispute. But the monster beasts outside are different. They fight for food every day. They are experienced and ferocious in fighting. They are not the 5 in captivity. One who can resist. But it is also necessary to exercise them. With the addition of the 3 flying winged tigers, Yu Haoran immediately withdrew from the battle circle and ran towards Johnson quickly. At this time, Johnson was bleeding excessively and was already dying. The white fur was dyed with bright red blood, making it look like the charming Manzushawa. Yu Haoran quickly stuffed a handful of pills into its mouth. Johnson forced himself to open his eyes, and his life was saved again. On the other side, Mr. Mew's broadsword made a roaring sound, and the thin blade cut off the venomous snakes that spit out their cores and sprayed venom. They encountered a group of venomous snakes, and Mr. Mew killed them on the ground. Feng Yuan and his son sit on the golden eagle and point where the golden eagle hits, showing the spirit of a generation of emperors. The 2 golden eagles are still enjoying themselves. These venomous snakes are their delicacy, so they don't care about the master's haphazard instructions. The most embarrassing group is Shitu Xiaoliu. They were besieged by a group of demon foxes for no other reason. The demon fox king saw that the hateful humans had contracted their tribesmen and surrounded them tightly. Wu, a leading 5th level white fox, looked up to the sky and roared, and the fox sons and grandsons behind him tried their best to attack the 2 people. The 2 of them immediately felt dizzy, and the scene seemed to be changing constantly, leaving them at a loss. They didn't know where to hit, so they had to swing their swords and chop at random. Xiao Liu's talismans were thrown all over the sky for free. The spiritual pets of Xiaoliu and Shitu watched their master fall into the illusion of a demon fox. They could not disobey their master, and they would die if their master died. So they smashed the illusion with one claw and stood in front of the 2 of them, and slapped back the attacking fox sons and grandsons with a few more claws. They also looked up to the sky and said "woo" a few times, and then the leading 5th level demon fox "woo" a few times, led the fox sons and grandsons to turn around and disappeared into the forest and disappeared. When Xiao Lu saw that the crisis was over, he sat down on the ground without any image, breathing heavily. Stone sat next to him, hugged him in his arms, patted his back and comforted him, "Don't be afraid, the crisis has passed." Xiao Lu nodded and leaned into his arms, her eyes wet. This was the most dangerous time she had ever faced in her life. Without the help of her 2 spiritual pets, the consequences would have been disastrous. After Xiaoliu felt better, Shitu got up and collected the corpses of the demon foxes on the ground. He went back to help Xiaoliu up, and saw that Xiaoliu no longer had the embarrassment or cowardice before, but only determination, the determination to become stronger. Xiao Liu's eyes were dark, and her big bright eyes were bloodshot. In the past, she always relied on her brothers and sisters to protect her from the wind and rain, and her life was unknown. Only after today's battle did she realize that no matter how strong her relatives were, she was not as strong as herself. If she was not strong, she would drag down powerful people. She was such a before and didn't know how to practice properly. In the past, her brothers and sisters had told her to practice hard, but she just laughed it off. Shita looked at her distressedly. Of course he could feel her expression. He was both happy and worried. I am happy that Xiaoliu has finally grown up, but I am worried that Xiaoliu will no longer rely on him like before. However, considering the cruelty of the world of immortality, Shita still likes Xiaoliu's transformation. Only strength can protect oneself. Xiaoliu can change in a battle. He is happy for her. On the other side, Yuan and the two were fighting with a group of warehouse eagles. Although they could not fly in the restricted air of Juya Forest, their fight on land was even more fierce. With one claw, the ground suddenly became a deep pit. Bang bang bang, Yuan's earth wall technique was used to its fullest, and the thick earth wall hit the head of the flying wild eagle like a hard oar. Quack, quack, quack. At this time, several warehouse eagles screamed a few times and were smashed to death. Waner, be careful, Mujukin shouted. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 335. Chapter 335 Injured. Yuan turned around, her scalp numb. Just now, dozens of warehouse eagles attacked her from front to back. She used the transformation step to avoid the front. She didn't expect that there were several hawks behind her that could keep up with her steps very quickly, and then from there attack her from behind. Fortunately, Mujukin found out in time and sent out 20 soul thorns at once to save her. Huh, it's so dangerous. Yuan instantly jumped behind Mujukin, back to back with him. Mujukin, thank you. What are you talking about? You are my wife, Mujukin said while holding out his flying sword. His flying sword is his natal magic weapon, and its power is naturally more powerful than ordinary magic weapons. When the sword flew out, it cut off the necks of 5 warehouse eagles. They did not release their spiritual pets to help, they just wanted to stimulate their own potential to improve their combat effectiveness. The two of them cooperated very well, and after half a stick of incense, all the dozens of warehouse eagles were killed. Yuan collected Kang Ying's body and found a remote place where the two of them entered the space to heal. Although Juya Forest is said to be a restricted area, warehouse eagles are birds after all, and they can still fly half a foot high. Their attack power became even stronger. Even the magic weapons and robes could not resist the sharp claws on their bodies. The wounds were so deep that they could even see the bones, and there were countless scratches on their bodies. It can be seen how powerful Kang Ying's attack is. After their injuries recovered, Mujukin went into seclusion to learn about his experience in the battle. Yuan is refining elixirs. She wants to refine some 4th-level healing elixirs. These are prepared for spiritual pets. 3rd-level elixirs are useless to them. Her spiritual pets rarely come out to help, but the spiritual pets of her eldest brother and Uncle Mu will definitely join the battle, and there is no way they will not be injured. So it's better to be prepared. After refining, they continued to kill monsters and approached the world of immortality. 1 year later, when Yuan and his wife arrived at their destination, the 5 brothers Yuhairan had already arrived. When she saw the murderous aura among the 5 people and 5 beasts, they were completely different from their gentle aura before. Big brother, second brother, third brother, small 5 and small 7, Yuan rushed over quickly. Xiao Sier, you are lagging behind this time, Yu Haoshan chuckled. Yes, you are in trouble. Yuan looked back at Mujukin, who touched his nose and smiled. He took a few quick steps forward to greet his uncles. A few people rolled their eyes at him. Although they were not married, they had never eaten pork and had never seen a pig run away. Needless to say, this guy must have been pestering his sister to give birth to a monkey. Speaking of which, they have been married for so long, why don't they have a nephew? The brothers looked at Yuan's belly. Yuan saw her brothers looking at her belly with strange eyes. Her face turned dark, she had no food in her stomach. Ahem, cough, cough, brother, Let me take care of your spiritual pets first. Yuan quickly broke the weird atmosphere. Oh, okay. Yu Heiran and his brothers blushed and quickly asked her to put all the winged tigers into the space. Uncle, why haven't they come yet? Yu Heiran said worriedly. Have you sent a message to them? Yuan asked. She met them once in the forest before and gave them some pills. She didn't send any message after that. Yes, they said they would meet up soon. It has been more than a day. Let's do it again, Yu Hao said. Where are Xiaoliu and the others? Xiao asked. You send a message to ask. Xiao Qi glanced at him. The fifth brother was too lazy to compete with the sixth sister. Oh, Xiao Wu really took out the sound transmitting talisman and started transmitting the sound. Where is Grandpa? Yuan asked Mujukan. Mujukan shook his head. How about we go in and look for it? Okay, Mujukan nodded. Brother, please wait here. Send us a message when they arrive, Yuan said, and return their spiritual pets to them. Yu Heiran nodded. At this time, the four old men, Mr. Mu, were fighting inextricably with a group of monks. The opponent has 3 golden elixir monks and 6 foundation building monks. In fact, they can let their spiritual pets help. It is a pity that after they had a fight with a group of golden armored beasts, the 2 eagles and Mr. Mu's golden king lion were seriously injured and have not yet recovered. Only Wu Sheng's fire Luan was left alive, but it had to take care of the injured 3 beasts and pay attention to the attacks of the 3 Jindan monks. Its strongest attack is fire, but the spiritual power consumed by spitting fire cannot be replenished in time, so it can only use its own powerful body to block it. The 9 monks originally went into the Juya forest to hunt monsters, and they happened to encounter 4 of them and 4 beasts coming out injured. That's why I started thinking about killing people and seizing treasures. Wang Cai, go and collect those 3 monsters. A golden elixir monk saw that he could not attack for a long time. The old man who wielded a big sword had suffered a lot, and he was a little anxious. They had to fight quickly. The most indispensable thing in the world of immortality was the mantis stalking the cicada and the oriole behind. He didn't want to make a wedding dress for others. Okay, the person who called Wang Cai ran towards the place where the 3 spiritual pets were lying. Mr. Mu and the 4 others were not in a hurry, but Huoluan was in a hurry. It left Mr. Mu behind and they rushed towards Wang Cai. The person who was shouting before saw the annoying Huoluan and ran away. 2 of them, 2 golden elixirs and 6 foundations, attacked the 4 old masters Mu. Boom, boom, boom. Magic weapons and spell talismans flew all over the sky in an instant. Quick, over there, Yuan and the others finally found it. Mr. Mu was angry, with a fierce look in his eyes, and he raised his sword and rushed towards the commanding Jindan monk, a completely lose-lose strategy. Send out 10 soul thorns at the same time. The commanding Jindan cultivator saw Mr. Mu's aura-filled sword rushing towards him desperately, and he immediately swung the sword with all his strength. Institutions. Ah! 2 forces collided, and a long wound appeared on Mr. Mu's body from his shoulder to his lower abdomen, which was almost split in half. He no longer had any strength and fell to the ground. The golden elixir monk threw away his flying sword, held his head and fell to the ground. He rolled a few times and bled to death from his 7 orifices. At the same time, another golden elixir monk attacked Feng Yuan and the others with 6 golden elixirs. How can 3 scum and 5 dregs stand up to each other? They immediately have no power to fight back. Bang bang bang, after 3 sounds, he was knocked down, and he was thrown out and he didn't know whether he was alive or dead. Ah, just as Yi Jindan and 6th establishment wanted to finish the damage, the 7 of them fell to the ground with their heads in their hands, and soon they were dead. Grandpa, uncle, the voices of a man and a woman sounded. Yuan and Mujukan rushed over. Mujukan was the first to run to Mr. Mu. When he saw the injury, he was shaking all over. He took out a 4th level healing elixir and stuffed it into Mr. Mu. Mouth. Grandpa, you will be fine. My grandson is late. Mujukin burst into tears. Grandpa, Grandpa is okay, Grandpa, he's not dead yet. Mr. Mew spat out a few words with difficulty. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 336. Chapter 336. On the other side, Yuan found Feng Yuan, Feng Yunjing, and Wu Sheng. They were seriously injured, beyond recognition, covered in blood, and could hardly feel their breath. Yuan's heart froze. They were only so late and were so seriously injured. She quickly put them into the room of the space, and then rushed to the three spiritual pets. They were also dying. When she passed by, Huoluan grabbed the golden elixir monk's throat like a madman and had already killed the golden elixir monk. There was no time to check now, so she quickly put the four spiritual pets into the space. He then put the corpses of the monks on the ground into storage bags, and then went to Mr. Mew's place. Mujukin, let's go to the advanced space. The outside is not suitable for healing. Mujukin nodded. So after Yuan put the two of them into the space, she found a hidden place and entered the space. In the space, Mr. Mew was taken care of by Mujukin. She entered Feng Yuan's room first. Hurry up and stuff him with a 4th level healing elixir, and then use spiritual power to help him dissolve it. As soon as the 4th level elixir was dissolved, Feng Yuan's injuries healed at the speed of the naked eye. When his breath gradually strengthened, she went into Feng Yunjing's room again. The injuries were all about the same, so she stuffed him with a 4th level healing elixir, and then helped him dissolve the potion. The last one was Wu Sheng. She still stuffed a 4th level healing elixir into him and helped him dissolve the potion. Yuan let out a long breath. Her life had been saved, but she didn't have time to check carefully. There were still 4 spiritual pets, and they were also seriously injured. She quickly rushed to the house of the 4 spiritual pets, and after pouring 3 4th level healing pills into the 4 of them, she went to see Mr. Mew. Mujukin, how is Grandpa? She asked as she entered the door. Much better, the internal and external injuries have recovered, and I just fell asleep, Mujukin said with a sigh of relief. Oh, by the way, where are your uncle and the others? They are fine, at least their lives have been saved, Yuan said lightly. On the bed, Mr. Mew's breathing was steady and his face was no longer so pale. She turned around and came to Feng Yuan's room and sat on the stool. Yes, she felt a little uncomfortable in her heart. She saved 3 people and 3 beasts by herself. He just stayed at Mr. Mew's place and didn't say anything to help her. Isn't he worried about Feng Yuan and the others' injuries? That is also her uncle, her relative. Yuan felt a little blocked at this time, and a little bit cold. She took a deep breath and glanced at Feng Yuan on the bed. When she saw how seriously injured he was, her heart ached. She doesn't blame him. It's understandable that he would lose his mind in front of the people closest to him, but there will be no next time. She only gave him this chance. If this time he was overwhelmed or forgot, she would be generous and not care. But if similar situations happen in the future, it will prove that the weight of these people in his heart is not as heavy as she imagined. She is not the Holy Mother. She has always been doing her best for everyone, but what Mujukin did this time chilled her to the core. Yuan retracted her thoughts and used her spiritual consciousness to check Feng Yuan's whole body. The original serious injuries had healed by 40 to 50%, and her breathing began to stabilize. She performed several cleaning operations on him, covered him with a quilt, and then came to Feng Yunjing's room. Father and son are in similar situations. After the 3 people and 3 beasts were completely dealt with, she stepped out of the space and ran towards the meeting place. Xiao Sier, why are you back alone? Have they found uncle? Yu Heiran asked eagerly as he saw her running towards her. Yuan ran to them and saw that they all looked nervous. She took a breath, waved her hands towards them and said, they were injured and are recovering. Everyone nodded after hearing this. They knew that she was in her space. Are you seriously injured? Why do you look so bad? Yu Heiran saw that she was not in a good mood. It's okay, let's go first. Chitu and the others just arrived. Yuan accepted their spiritual pets, and then everyone walked out of the mountain together. Yu Heiran's brothers and sisters followed her silently. They clearly felt that Xiao Sier was in a bad mood, and they didn't know why. Xiao Sier didn't say anything before, so it would be in vain for them to ask. When a group of 8 people walked out of the 9 nether forest, they could fly with their swords. So everyone wielded their flying swords and flew with their swords. In the space, Mujukan saw that Yuan had left the space and did not call him. He walked out of the room and went to Feng Yuan's room to check on the 3 of them, and found that their injuries were much more serious than Grandpa's. Thinking of Wanner's calm tone after asking when she finally came to her grandfather's room, Mujukan slapped his head violently. He was really confused. All 3 of them were seriously injured. Wanner was treating their injuries alone, but he didn't even look at them. No wonder Wanner was angry. No matter what Feng Yuan said, she would still be sad and nervous if she had relatives connected by blood in her body. And he? Why? Mujukan sighed deeply. After a group of people flew out of the mountains, an ancient city appeared in their consciousness. From a distance, the city looked very big. Half an hour later, 8 people landed outside the city. 9 Nether City. Yuan looked at the 3 majestic words on the city gate. It was much larger than the city they had visited before. But it's good here, the city is big, there are many people, and it's close to the Juya Mountains. Brother, let's go to the city first and have a look, Yuan said. As for whether to buy a house in the city or build a house in the mountains, you still need to understand the situation in the world of immortality. If you occupy someone else's territory, you will get into trouble. Yu Heiran and others nodded. So the 8 men entered the city. In the city, monks make up the majority, with chi training monks and foundation building monks being the majority, and golden elixir monks being rare. Most of them come and go in a hurry. 7 golden elixir monks and 1 foundation building monk came in at once, immediately attracting the attention of many people. Such a combination of handsome men, beautiful women, and strong strength is really rare. Even the mortal children who sell maps and serve as guides in the city dare not approach them. The key is that there is such a chilling air about them that people dare not look directly at them for too long. Even Xiao Lu, who had always been heartless, became much calmer, let alone the other 7. Their group of people must have come out of the Juya forest. Oh my god, they are full of murderous aura. A female foundation building cultivator looked at them and quickly turned her head. She wanted to take a look at the handsome man, but they were full of murderous aura. Yu Heiran and others looked at themselves. Why didn't they feel it? Looking at those people being so exaggerated, is it necessary? End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 337. Chapter 337. Mujukan leaves? Yuan ignored other people's looks and comments, and bought a map of Juya City from a mortal child. According to the map, they quickly found an inn and opened 7 rooms. Everyone entered the room to take a rest. Xiao Sier, can I go see my uncle? Yu Heiran followed Yuan and asked her. You guys should rest first, uncle and the others are asleep now. Okay then, Yu Heiran left without saying anything. Yuan entered the room and activated the formation before entering the space. In the space, Mujukan was waiting for her in front of the wooden house. When he saw her coming in, he stood up and shouted, Wanner. Yuan glanced at him lightly, nodded to him, and walked to Fen Yuan's room. Mujukan followed her closely. After Yuan looked at the three people and the four beasts, she determined that nothing was seriously wrong and they would wake up in a few days. Sleeping now is mainly caused by being too seriously injured or bleeding too much to cause coma. In the wooden house, Mujukan followed him in. He stepped forward and held her in his arms. "Waner, I'm sorry." "What are you sorry for?" Yuan turned around and looked at him and asked. "She will never want a selfish man. If he doesn't recognize the problem and the answer doesn't satisfy her, she will consider living with him." "Waner, don't be angry, I was wrong this time. I shouldn't have only cared about people who are related to me by blood and neglected you to face your relatives alone. I'm not stupid, but I'm going to say something ugly in the future if this happens again. We can get along easily." Yuan broke away from his arms, took off her shoes and lay on the bed. Mujukan was confused when he heard this. Why did it rise to the level of good together and good separation? He frowned and looked at Yuan with her eyes closed on the bed. Why did he feel like she was so strange? Waner had never relied on him before, but now he felt that a gap had suddenly formed between them. When he took a step forward, she stood still. If he took a step back, he would be further away from her. He felt powerless for a moment. He no longer wants to become an immortal, nor does he want to live forever. He just wants to live a simple life, working at sunrise and resting at sunset. What's good about this kind of life of fighting and killing? When will he be the boss? Mujukan looked deeply at Yuan, his eyes darkened, and he turned around and left, returning to Mr. Mu's bed. Mr. Mu just woke up and saw him coming in looking depressed. "Chenur, what's wrong with you?" Mr. Mu sat up carefully and asked doubtfully. "It's nothing, Grandpa, are you okay now?" "Grandpa can even sit up. What's the matter, are you having a quarrel with Miss Wan?" Mujukan lowered his head and said nothing. "Hey, isn't it normal for the young couple to quarrel and bicker? Just calm her down." Mr. Mu thought it was a big deal, so he patted him on the shoulder and said. Mujukan nodded. How could he tell his grandfather what Waner said? Grandpa would definitely think too much and be sad. "Grandpa, you can adjust your breath yourself, and I'll practice it too," Mujukan said. "Okay, don't think too much, live as you please, don't get into trouble." Mr. Mu took his hand and patted it again. Mujukan nodded and went out. Mr. Mu's eyes immediately darkened. This grandson has changed too much since he met Wan Yetu. He has become sentimental, not optimistic about things, and has lost his self. His eyes looked outside the room and did not look back for a long time. After Yuan woke up, she turned over and got up. She felt refreshed after her sleep. She came outside Mr. Mu's house and knocked on the door. "Come in." Yuan pushed the door open and saw Mr. Mu sitting cross-legged on the bed meditating. "Grandpa, are you feeling better?" "Well, girl Wan, sit down." Mr. Mu pointed to the stool next to the table. Yuan nodded. Did Mr. Mu want to say something to her? "Girl Wan, did you have a fight with Chenur?" "Sure enough," Mr. Mu asked her. "Well, it doesn't count. They didn't quarrel, she only said a few words to him." "Oh, then go see him when you have time." "Thanks to you and Chenur this time." "Grandpa, you don't have to be polite. You are our grandfather, so you should." Yuan was a little more polite. "Then you go and see him. Grandpa will meditate for a while." Mr. Mu clearly drove him away. Yuan stood up and nodded, then went out and closed the door. "Then I went to see Fen Yuan." "Huh, uncle is awake?" "Yes, you don't think your uncle will be able to sleep for a long time?" Fen Yuan pretended to be angry. "How can I? It's better to see you lively and active every day." Yuan put a few bottles of elixirs into his hand and said with a smile. "Girl, where are your cousin and Lao Mu? How are they?" "It's so close, you didn't look at it?" "I just woke up. I have no strength." They are all fine, don't worry. Big brother also said he would come in to see you. Do you want them to? Is there anything good to see? Does uncle have an extra leg or a missing leg? Fen Yuan said angrily. His injury has healed, so what are you looking at? Okay, okay, don't look at them, just go and see them. Yuan hurriedly left. She looked at Fen Yunjing and Wu Sheng again. They were also awake and adjusting their breath. She knocked on the door in front of Mujukan. After a while the door opened. Mujukan, are you in a bad mood? Sure enough, this guy had a serious face, as if someone owed him a spiritual stone. No, why are you here? Are you still in Juya Forest now? Mujukan said stiffly. Yuan frowned. Was he complaining about what she said? In the inn in Juya City. You let me and Grandpa go out first. Then you two go solo. Flying solo? Although Mujukan didn't understand what flying solo meant, he guessed it meant living alone, right? But he is not living alone, but wants to take his grandfather back to the secular world. Grandpa likes to be a general, it makes him happy there. But now he has no interest in cultivating immortals and goes back to live an ordinary life with his parents. Mujukan pulled her over, and the two sat face to face. He looked into her eyes and said seriously, Wan'er, actually I don't want to become an immortal anymore. Really, I don't know what it is when I face the days of fighting and killing every day. Head. After becoming a god, there will be a spiritual world, and after the spiritual world, there will be a fairy world. The situation like my grandfather and others may happen at any time, and I can't guarantee that they will do something irrational. What you said about getting together really makes me feel scared, and I feel that the distance between us is widening. Are you serious? Your inner demon has invaded again, right? Lie down and I'll show you. Yuan didn't believe that these words would come out of his mouth. There is no invasion of inner demons, I am serious, and I hope you can go back with me, Mujukan said stubbornly. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 338. Chapter 338. Mujukan leaves too. Yuan was stunned. She really didn't expect Mujukan to think so. She took a deep breath, looked at his slightly haggard face and said, if you think about it, you can go back. I won't go back, but I can go back and see you at any time. After saying that, Yuan's consciousness moved out of the space. She lay on the bed and couldn't stop her tears. In the space, Mujukan watched her go out with determination. He sat in silence for a while, and suddenly felt empty in his heart. In Mr. Mu's room, Mujukan lowered his head and remained silent. Alas! Chenur, have you thought about it? Mr. Mu asked with a sigh. Well, I've thought about it, Grandpa, let's go back. Well, we will go back after Grandpa recovers from his injury, but what about you and girl Wan? Mr. Mu looked at him worriedly. Like you Wan, he never thought that Chenur would return to the secular world. However, thinking that for such a long time, their family has been relying on Wan Yedu, he felt somewhat uncomfortable. Let's do this for now, Mujukan said. Okay, maybe after the two of them have calmed down for a while, they will naturally make a decision. There is really no other way. His grandson is so young and outstanding, why can't he meet a suitable woman? Yuan was crying outside and was so dizzy that she didn't know why she fell asleep again. She only got up when Yu Heiran knocked on the door. She got up and tidied herself up, twitching the corners of her mouth to make her face look better. The door was opened, and Yu Heiran and his brothers were outside. Xiao Sier, what's wrong with you? Why do you look so bad? Yu Heiran frowned and asked, what's wrong with Xiao Sier and Mujukan? Has the conflict escalated? Or is he bullying Xiao Sier? Xiao Sier, did that brat Mujukan bully you? Before Yuan could say anything, Yu Heiran asked again eagerly. Xiao Ser, let him out, and the second brother will ask him, Yu Hao said angrily. Xiao Ser had obviously cried, but in their impression, she had never cried much. Yes, Xiao Ser, you have an older brother and a younger brother, don't wrong yourself, Yu Haoshan squeezed over and said. There is still me, fourth sister Xiaoliu also waved her fist. Yes, there are still two of us. If we can't win, we will bite him, Xiao Wu also said. Ft. Yuan was laughed at by Xiao Wu and bit him. Is he a dog? However, she felt much better when she heard her brothers and sisters venting their anger for her. It's nothing, don't worry, he doesn't want to stay here and wants to go back, Yuan said in a euphemistic way. What? He wants to leave you alone, Yu Haoshan quit, looking like he was about to fight with Mujukan. Yuan waved her hand, third brother, I won't go back with him. Stop standing around. Let's go shopping in the city. If there is a suitable house, we will buy one. Yu Hairan said with a gloomy face, Xiao Ser, don't be in a hurry to go around the city. Brother doesn't want you to have unresolved conflicts. If he really loses to you, although brother is not as strong as him, his brains are not as good as his. Yuan sighed. This matter was getting complicated. She believed what her elder brother said. He was already smart and calm. Mujukan didn't have enough brains, so it was easy to deal with him. She simply took Yu Hairan into the space alone without saying a word, and the root of the disaster was laid. After Yu Hairan entered the space alone, everyone closed the door and sat in the room to wait. Xiao Lu held her hand tightly and comforted her silently. In the space, Yu Hairan kicked open Mujukan's door, stepped forward and punched him in the face. Mujukan was punched in the face while he was in a daze. How could he be punched in the face? There was a fishy sweetness in his mouth. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said, Brother, what do you mean? What do you mean? Why did you leave Xia behind? If you don't tell me the reason today, I will kill you, Yu Hairan said viciously. He dared to bully his sister. How could his sister be sorry for their family? Mujukan felt a pain in his heart, and he quickly threw out an isolation formation. Brother, sit down and listen to me. Yu Hairan stood motionless. Mujukan was helpless, so he told the whole story. Brother, I'm not cowardly. I'm afraid of losing Wan'er. You know her character. She can do what she says. I really don't want to become an immortal anymore. If I continue to practice, it will be difficult for me to even see her. Yu Hairan was so angry that his teeth clenched. No wonder Xiao Ser was so angry about this unsatisfactory performance, but Mujukan obviously had a mental problem now. He suppressed the anger in his heart. Okay, you guys go back first, just think of it as a training. It's best to practice. State of mind. Mujukan threw a jade slip to Yu Hairan. This is the underground passage in Juya Forest. If something happens to Wan'er, please run there. After saying that, he withdrew the formation and went out. Chen'er, what are you doing? Mr. Mu and the other four people were standing outside, watching them come out worriedly. Grandpa, let's go. Mujukan took Mr. Mu's hand and left. Mr. Mu, please take him back first. There is something wrong with his state of mind. Yu Hairan sent a message to Mr. Mu. Mr. Mu turned back to look at Yu Hairan and nodded towards him. Subsequently, everyone in the space left the space together. As soon as Mujukan came out, he walked up to Yuan. Seeing this, Yu Hairan waved his hand and everyone in the room left, leaving them alone. Wan'er, I'm going to leave for a while, just to practice. Mujukan organized his words and said. Yuan looked at him calmly, but her heart was very confused at the moment. She didn't understand why Mao and the two people who loved each other could be like this. She nodded towards him, took out a storage bag from the space and gave it to him, put it in his hand, and softly uttered one word, "Okay." Mujukin's eyes turned red. He held her storage bag tightly and hugged her tightly. He kissed her deeply on the head, let her go, and turned around to go out. Yuan stood there in a daze, with only the silent tears streaming down her face. After a long time, she opened the door and saw Yu Heiran and the others standing outside. "Brother, go buy some spirit animal bags and come back." Yu Heiran nodded and quickly went downstairs. "Hey, let's go in," Yu Hao shouted. Everyone entered the room again, but no one knew what to say when they came in. "You look at me and I look at you." In the end, Xiaoliu sat next to Yuan and whispered, "Fourth sister, if you feel sad, just cry, and we will cry with you." Yu Hao rolled his eyes at her. "Why cry? Just beat them up." Stone looked at the ceiling. Why did he marry a fool? "Fourth sister, don't be sad. Really, aren't you still by my side?" When were the 7 of us brothers and sisters separated? Yuan patted this simple-minded silly girl. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 339. Chapter 339 Pregnant. Well, we brothers and sisters will always be together. Xiaoliu smiled sweetly and leaned on Yuan's shoulder. I don't know who comforted whom. At this time, Yu Heiran bought 20 spirit animal bags and came back. Yuan took it, entered the space, and loaded up Yu Heiran and their spiritual pets, including Mr. Mu and Mujukin, before coming out of the space. After they came out, they were given to them, and only Mr. Mu and Mujukin were left. Yu Heiran sighed, took the 2 spirit animal bags and said, "I'll deliver them." Xiao Sier is just soft-hearted, why is Mujukin so pretentious? Yuan nodded. Yu Heiran took it and went out. "Uncle, second brother, you all go and transfer." She took out another storage bag and put it in Yu Hao's hand. Everyone knew that she wanted to be alone, so they all nodded and went out. She was alone. She closed the door and activated the formation to enter the space. In the wooden house, Yuan sat on the bed blankly, and she fell asleep again without knowing it. Outside, Yu Heiran rushed to the entrance of the underground passage as quickly as possible. Mujukin and the others had already entered the passage. He had to release Johnson to make it smaller and ride on it before catching up with them. Wanner asked the eldest brother to send it here. Mujukin took the spirit beast bag. "Otherwise, you guys should go back quickly." "I'll go back too," Yu Heiran said angrily. This man is really getting stupider. If Xiao Sier hadn't been able to let him go, he would have really wanted to punch him to death. He turned around and left without waiting for them to say anything. Mr. Mu took the spirit animal bag and saw that it was his spiritual pet. He looked at Mujukin, who was still in a daze, shook his head and sighed. He couldn't stand the bearish look of his grandson anymore. No matter how bad he is still his grandson. What can he do? Take him back first and let him live alone for a while. This child really followed him and was very affectionate. If he wasn't so affectionate, there wouldn't be any inner demons in him. Now I have a mental problem again. Hey, it's true, this situation is really nerve-wracking and distracting. Just a short while ago, my grandson was made stupid. I don't know how long it took for Yuanya to wake up, but she still felt like she couldn't open her eyes. What's wrong with me? Yuan muttered. Since the monk established the foundation, he can stay up without sleeping. She is already in the middle stage of the golden core. Can she still wake up from drowsiness? Yuan thought for a while, wondering if her soul was too tired. With a flash of consciousness, she came to the edge of the black pool, scooped up some divine soul liquid and drank it. Why did this divine soul liquid escape into Danshan, After Yuan drank the divine soul liquid, it was not directly absorbed by the divine soul as usual. Why did you go to Danshan this time? Her consciousness immediately looked inwards. Eh? This is it? Oh my god, Yuan covered her mouth. This was not her Danshan. It was clearly in her womb. Two thumb-sized objects were absorbing the divine soul liquid. She is pregnant? Or two. This is so ridiculous, the man is gone and the baby is here. No wonder I have been feeling sleepy during this time. It's just that this happiness came too late, the child's father ran away. Yuan sat there stupidly again, stroking her belly constantly. Life is so magical, it turns out that little life is born here. From time to time, I looked inward at the two small groups. Unconsciously, the melancholy in my eyes slowly dissipated, replaced by the light of the greatest maternal love in the world. There is still a maternal smile on her face. After sitting for enough, she got up and went to the kitchen to cook a lot of food, especially the meat of the fifth-level monsters. She wanted to eat more of these in the future so that the baby could absorb more spiritual power. After having a hearty meal, Yuan took out all the jade slips in the space and looked at them one by one. Basically, she would pick up a jade slip and see if it was not what she wanted, then put it away in categories so that she could find it later. Soon after reading the jade slips, she put away the jade slips that had been sorted into categories, and then took one of the remaining jade slips and browsed them carefully. She was pregnant for the first time and she didn't know what to pay attention to. Even though she was a monk, she would definitely have some things to pay attention to. Sure enough, after searching, she found 3 pieces, and the one she was looking at now was one of them. The jade slips say that pregnant female cultivators try not to fight, do not use spiritual power, and are not allowed to touch anything. It is more comprehensive than an encyclopedia. She quickly glanced at the other 2, and they were all similar. However, a jade slip mentions that a monk's pregnancy is no different than that of an ordinary person. Monks' pregnancies are not always certain. Some take more than a year, some a few years, and some even 10 years. Yuan was dumbfounded after reading it. How long did it take to keep it secret? That should not lead to death from exhaustion. She could imagine what it would be like in a few years with a little thumb-sized thing in her belly now. A woman with a distressed look on her face was walking with difficulty, holding a belly as big as a giant ball. Yuan smiled bitterly. The day had not yet reached that point, and she was thinking about all sorts of things. Do pregnant women like to have random thoughts? In short, the boat will naturally go straight when it reaches the bridge. Isn't it just a pregnancy? It's even more pretentious. She didn't go out either. She stayed in the space with peace of mind. She gave her second brother the spiritual stone so that they could get things done. Days passed by day, and before she knew it, she had been in space for a year. During this year, the 2 thumb size did not grow much, they only grew in a circle. Yuan suddenly understood that 30 days in space are equivalent to 1 day outside. Space will not change the lifespan of humans and animals, the same as the outside. So she has been in space for a year, and has only been outside for a dozen days. Yuan patted her head and said that she would be stupid for 3 years after being pregnant for 3 years. As expected, she was not deceived by her words. As soon as his spiritual consciousness moved out of the space, he opened the door, but there was no one outside. She immediately sent a message to Yu Heiran, and soon he responded and told her to go to the south of the city. They bought a house next to Qinnanfang city and everyone lived in it. Yuan came out of the inn and walked to the south of the city. As she walked, she looked around and saw that there were still many pedestrians on the street, most of them coming from the south direction of the city. Some are wearing sect uniforms, some are wearing family uniforms, and there are more monks without official uniforms. These are casual cultivators just like them. There is not much difference between casual cultivators. Most of them wear ordinary robes. Some minor chi practitioners even wear mortal clothes, which have no defensive capabilities at all. There are some shops on both sides of the street, selling everything. The most common ones are elixir shops, magic weapon shops, spiritual meal shops, talisman shops, and formation shops. Of course, there are shops that sell everything. This kind of shop is more noble. Unconsciously, Yuan had arrived at the gate of Qinnanfang City. A tall signboard read Qinnanfang City. Fourth sister, here. At this moment, Xiao Liu's voice rang out, and she looked for it. Xiao Lu was standing in the middle of the street, waving his hand to call her. Yuan quickly walked a few steps and quickly came to Xiao Lu. Come on, fourth sister, let's go in and take a look at our big house, Xiao Lu said and led her to a big house next to her. End of this chapter. The Brave Life of a Space Peasant Girl. Author, Lan Department. Chapter 340. Chapter 340 Prenatal Education. As soon as the sisters entered the house, Yu Heiran and his brothers came out to welcome them. Xiao Ser, are you okay? Yu Heiran frowned and asked her worriedly. Xiao Ser looks much better today. He cannot understand how a woman feels without the love of a man. But he understands his sister. She is a strong person and takes everything on her own, so he loves her even more. Yuan shook her head and said, Big brother, second brother, and third brother, you really don't have to worry, I'm really fine. Let's go take a look at the yard, and where is my room? She is very well now, and is fine everywhere, but she sees the concern her brothers and sisters have for her, and it warms her heart. Yu Heiran sighed softly, let's go, my eldest brother will accompany you for a walk. Then he waved to the other younger siblings and asked them to go about their business. After the brothers and sisters separated, Yu Heiran took Yuan around the yard a few times. In fact, there is nothing to look around in the yard, and it is not as beautiful as the wooden building they built themselves. The walls are made of milky white or cut into stones larger than bricks. The roof and so on are almost the same. It's just that there are more small courtyards inside. There are 2 rooms and 1 small courtyard. This is specially designed for the monks. Monks are different from ordinary people's houses. They need pots and pans every day to eat, drink and defecate, but monks don't need them. After the transfer, the brother and sister stood under a spiritual fruit tree. Yu Heiran looked at her and seemed to be in a much better mood. He still said, Xiao Ser, eldest brother knows that you are sad. I see that Mujukan is in a different mood again. Question. Let him stay alone for a while. When he gets over this hurdle, he will definitely come back. Don't worry, big brother understands him well. He can't leave you alone forever. Here. However, you two need to communicate well. Although the eldest brother does not understand how to get along as a couple, he knows that conflicts must be resolved, otherwise the conflicts will accumulate and become inextricable. What will happen to you two in the future depends on what you want. What Yu Heiran said to her was from the bottom of his heart. In all these years, their brother and sister had never spoken so much truth. Yuan nodded. She didn't know that something was wrong with Mujukan's state of mind. But he refused her to help him check. She thought for a long time that his state of mind should come from her. But no matter what, she still couldn't accept that Mujukan would run away like this whenever something happened. This was the monk's fatal weakness. You must rely on your own perseverance and the factors that interfere with you to fight against it. It is difficult to eradicate the problem by blindly evading it. Since you have chosen to be a monk, there is still a road to the sky ahead of you, why not seize it? She is a person who has died once and understands the value of life very well. A person dies like a lamp going out, how can he start over again? But it is rare in the world for someone like her to come back to life from a dead body. So how could she not cherish this hard-won life? So whether Mujukan will continue to cultivate as an immortal or not, she will not back down. Now that she has 2 children in her belly, she must become stronger and protect them in the future. As a mother, you are strong. Yuan took a deep breath, and when she looked up again, her eyes had returned to their former brightness and looked so shining, like the shining sun in the sky. She said firmly, "Brother, don't worry, there won't be anything you can't think about in the future, believe me." Yeah, Yu Heiran just thought that she really listened to what he said, and he felt a little relieved. Seeing that she had regained her former appearance, he took her to the room prepared for her. The room has been prepared to her liking, and all that is left is for her to pack her bags and move in. Yuan looked at the room and saw that everything was to her liking. She nodded, she liked it very much. "Thank you for worrying about it, brother. We brothers and sisters don't need to say polite words, let's take a rest first. We have opened a shop in Fangxi and are planning to open it in the next few days. The eldest brother has to prepare. If the 4th son needs to sell things in the shop, please let me just bring it here. Everyone has to keep accounts of the things sold in the shop. We can't always rely on you alone to support us. This responsibility should be borne by the eldest brother. As a result, I'll leave everything to you alone. From now on, I'll leave all these things to my eldest brother. I believe that my eldest brother will definitely protect you." Yuan nodded heavily towards Yu Heiran. Even if she wanted to take care of these things in the future, she would not have the energy to take care of them. Yu Heiran patted her gently and then went out. Yuan closed the door, installed a formation and activated it, then took some food from the space and went out to eat. "Not long after I came out, I felt hungry again. When I was full, I felt sleepy again, so I fell on the bed and fell asleep. The next day, Xiaolu came to knock on the door early. Yuan stood up and opened the door with eyes wide open. "Fourth sister, why are you still sleeping?" Xiaolu looked at her in disbelief. "Yes, what's wrong?" She was still a little confused. "It's not a big deal, the shop is open today, my eldest brother asked you if you want to go," Xiaolu said. Yuan waved her hand, put a storage bag in Xiaolu's hand and said, "I'm not going, just leave this to big brother, and I'll go practice some more later." Xiaolu took the storage bag, looked at her sleepy look, scratched her head to express that she didn't understand, muttered a few words and left. Yuan closed the door again, performed several cleaning procedures on her body, and after eating, she sat cross-legged on the bed and meditated. Drink some divine soul liquid from time to time. Since there are too little things to eat, she has so much, so she will definitely not be stingy. After drinking so much divine soul liquid, she believed that the 2 little guys would definitely have great spiritual consciousness in the future. And the fact that they can absorb it also shows that they all have spiritual roots. As for the concept of prenatal education, every pregnant woman knew it well in the previous life, and prenatal education is indeed very important. So this can be regarded as prenatal education for her. In the following days, Yuan did not only eat, drink, sleep, practice, make alchemy, and draw talismans every day, but also became her daily compulsory courses. "Occasionally I go to the market to pick up things, and my life is very uncomfortable. In the blink of an eye, half a year has passed." On this day, Xiaolu sent the spirit stones over as usual. "Fourth sister, why are you so fat?" Xiaolu asked her in confusion, staring at her swollen belly and round face. "Haha, aren't you fat, you have grown up after eating and sleeping every day." Yuan looked at the idiot in front of her. She did not hide her pregnancy at all. This idiot actually said she was fat. She really wanted to slap her in the face to make her smarter. End of this chapter.